Greetings, my lovelies. This is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Dracula Untold. Go ahead and insert the joke in regards to the Untold part of the title right here. I figure everybody else has already done such a good job at making fun of how stupid Dracula Untold sounds that I could add absolutely nothing without sounding like a ripoff. So anyway, this is one of those movies where I thought it looked like it could be pretty good, but it probably wouldn't be, much like I, Frankenstein. But I was really eagerly anticipating the release date because once it came out, then I'd never have to watch that stupid YouTube ad that keeps playing behind every single video I watch ever again, except that's not really true because I just went on YouTube this morning and I'm still seeing that same fucking trailer. But otherwise, I had low expectations, but I had no doubt in my mind that I would watch it. And really, is the film bad? I'd say it's closer to mediocre than outright bad, but it's closer to bad than being good. The problem with this movie is that nothing about it really stands out. I'm already forgetting what happens in it. And it was funny because going into it, I figured, yes, I was definitely going to write a written review. Well, I almost ended up canceling that project because there was just so little I could say about this movie. Now, eventually, after some hard work, I did figure out how to write a coherent review in regards to the movie, but talking about it on video might be even more difficult. So everything about this movie is just average. It occasionally dips into bad movie territory. It occasionally even has some good stuff, but otherwise it's just eh. Now, with a lot of bad movies which come out, they generally do have something about them that almost makes the movie worth watching. For example, I disliked Transformers 3, but even I will concede that the special effects and action scenes are really good. Even some of the films I hated much more than Dracula Untold that came out this year, from The Legend of Hercules, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, No Good Deed, Annabelle. I do think that they are technically worse films, but they still have attributes which I can see somebody wanting to see a movie based on it. So, No Good Deed had Idris Elba. Annabelle has a couple creepy moments and is a spin-off of The Conjuring. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, has that nostalgic value and, some pretty good action scenes. And The Legend of Hercules is so adorably awful that it's almost kind of fascinating for it, and plus it has a really good performance by Scott Adkins. But Dracula Untold just doesn't really have anything like that. And it's weird because I've heard that they plan on making a franchise based on not just Dracula, but all of the Universal monsters. In fact, I've even heard a rumor that they're going to start doing like an Avengers type deal where they start pitting them, or putting them together. You'd think that if that really was the plan, that they'd put a lot more effort into their first movie that's supposed to jumpstart all of this. I mean, if Iron Man was this underwhelming, they probably would not make the Avengers, at least anytime soon. So, God, where do I even begin? Well, part of the problem is that the film doesn't really know what it wants to be, and it isn't sure whom its target audience is supposed to be. So, is it a horror film? Absolutely not. But I did think this movie was at its most successful when it was being a horror film, because I'd say maybe 5–10% of this film is geared toward a horror audience. There was some creepy imagery. I really liked the shots of, people being impaled. The part where Vlad meets Charles Vance's character, who I guess is supposed to be Caligula. I didn't get that from the movie at all. That was pretty effective because Charles Vance is so freaking creepy. Speaking of Game of Thrones, not only is Lord Tywin in this movie, but so is Rickon Stark. Those Lannisters keep fucking with the Starks. So that was really good, but unfortunately he's not in the movie anywhere near enough to redeem it as a whole. But generally, if you want a horror film, it's not going to deliver. It's not really scary. Even though, like I said, it does have its moments that are kind of chilling. And it felt like it would have been a lot better if it was a hard R, because at times I could have sworn the director was trying to emulate 300 with some of just his visual style. Not always, but sometimes. And if this film had some hardcore gore and blood, then I think I would have liked it a little bit more. That would have helped it stand out and claim its own identity instead of just feeling like another action film to come out this year. But action movie fans will be a little bit more pleased, but even then, like, the action scenes were fine. I had no issue with how they were edited or choreographed. There was some interesting ideas driving the action scenes, like how Dracula uses his bats, which was kind of absurd, but at least it was an idea that I haven't seen used before that often. But even then, I've seen these kinds of action scenes before done better in better movies. So, like, once again, I think of like the Transformers films. I've always praised the action scenes; they're always great. But just everything else about them that sucked. Whereas at this film, it never reaches that level of suckitude, but the action scenes are never really that impressive or exciting. The special effects, though, are fine. It's like I can't figure out anything objectively wrong with them other than that they're just kind of underwhelming. But also, there's a lot of attempts at drama, and that's really going to annoy the people who want this to be an action movie, because the drama just isn't very good. Yet it dedicates a lot of screen time to it, as if the writers thought that they were writing something much deeper than they really were. So part of the problem is that it's just so short that everything is underdeveloped, so it's hard to really care about any of the characters or their situations. So, for example, the character of Vlad. His character arc could have been compelling, because this movie was supposed to be a start of darkness. The problem is, before he becomes Dracula, he's way too altruistic. He's a benevolent leader. Even his horrible past crimes can be kind of justified, which is very weird. It's always weird when they make real-life villains out to be kind of heroic. What's next? Are they going to make, like, Hitler some sort of superhero years from now? But I mean, okay, that could have worked if they started, making him more villainous once he became Dracula. But really, he's a good guy from beginning to end. I never felt that he had gone too far. He's always just looking after his people, even when they start turning on him. Even when he hits his despair event horizon, he still has good intentions. So there's never a bridge between this Dracula and the Dracula that we're more aware of as the villain. And that's another thing I hated too, is the very ending does sort of attempt to tie in, but it's done so poorly that it's like, it just made me more confused than anything. But whatever, that's not that important. So Dracula as a character is kind of boring. He needed a stronger inner conflict. He needed more of an edge to him. Even though I thought Luke Evans did a fine job portraying the character, I think that he's like a better version of Orlando Bloom, although he looks a lot like Jon Snow. But I do think that he's a pretty compelling actor. He just doesn't have a whole lot to work with. And then his relationships, they're just so typical. I mean, his scenes with his wife is pretty much the static love interest who everything she talks about is how they love each other and how they love their son. That's the extent of her character. And then every scene he shares with his son, who is Rickon Stark, it's to the kid's credit, I did think that he had the most compelling characterization to work with, because even though he's a sweet and innocent kid, you also see, he can be pretty brave. Like, he's perfectly willing to give himself up to spare his people, even though he's terrified by it. See, that is the kind of moral conflict I wanted to see more out of Dracula. And the scenes he shares with his father, they're just so corny and over the top in their sentimentality that I found it difficult not to gag. And then one thing I thought was strange too is, so the main villain of the film, Mehmed or something like that, he's played by Dominic Cooper, and they say early on that he and Vlad used to be like brothers when they were younger. So okay, that's going to be a part of the dynamic of their relationship, and but you never really get that at all when they actually start talking. Like, you know, his wife's the one who says that Vlad claimed this, so she asks him to go request this guy to not take their son. So he does so, and he asks, and the guy just kind of brushes him off as if he's just another underling, not this guy who he apparently grew up with. But they never really draw attention to that either. They just, I don't know, was there some sort of major falling out between the two? It's hard to say. It's just something that the film doesn't really focus on, while at the same time it dedicates a whole scene telling us how these guys used to be like brothers. And this led to another weird point. I don't think this movie necessarily had a plot hole in this regard, but it was very weirdly worded. So the bad guy, he demands 1,000 sons, and you just presume that it's 1,000 or 1,000 children. 1,000 children throughout his entire kingdom. But the way they start wording it later on was that the 1,000 children came from Vlad's lands, but when you see Vlad's people leave to hide, there's no more than 100 of them. So that's an area where the writers really could have clarified what he meant, or either that, or if that was the intention, that all these 1,000 children were coming from Vlad's lands, then obviously somebody screwed up there. But anyway, so none of the relationships really mattered. It would have been cool if Charles Vance's Caligula had a bigger role and worked as kind of a mentor to Vlad, and, you know, helped him join the dark side. But wasted opportunity. Charles Vance is only really in one full scene, you know, a teaser near the end, and then the part where, you know, Vlad first learns of him when he attacks his men, but you don't really see him there either, so that doesn't really count. And unfortunately, all this, I suspect that there was a lot of behind-the-scenes drama going on. You know, maybe at one point during the script there was going to be more emphasis on, you know, the history between Vlad and Mehmed and you know, stuff like that, but it just kind of got cut out over time. But the remnants of these apparently discarded subplots, they just pad out the story. And for a film that's only 85 minutes long, that is not a good thing. This movie does not need any filler. So that just slowed down the pacing, and it made me kind of bored. Even though, once again, like, I won't call Dracula Untold a terrible movie. It's just a very flat one. I think that's really all I have to say. So would I recommend it? No, not really, unless you just want to kill some time at the theaters, but I'd still say there are much better movies which deserve your attention, like why have I not seen Gone Girl? From what I've heard, that's actually really good, but no, I have to see Dracula Untold instead. Oh man. And Annabelle. I did do a written review of this after all, so please read that. My next written review will be of The Five Deadly Venoms, and I think the previous one before Dracula Untold was South Shaolin vs. North Shaolin, which is part of this, I just happen to have it with me, this fistful of Kung Fu box set, which contained the hilarious General Stone, which I did a Kick-Ass of Awesome episode on. So check all that stuff out. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook. I am working a lot on critiquing the critics, and hopefully I'll have that out this week. I can't guarantee when though. So thank you for your patience there. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you guys later.